Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm joined by a really good friend here in the sustainability movement, Stacie Stamper. What an interesting journey we're going to talk about from, your undergraduate, then becoming quite the salesperson, getting inspired by your time at Habitat for Humanity, and now we're going to talk a lot about contractors, even terms like deconstruction. So, Stacie, thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Let's talk on the Green Building Matters podcast. We like to start with careers because there's a lot of people just now getting into this green movement, which excites me because we help people pass LEED and WELL exams and keep it up. And it's great to see just a lot of people still just now getting into it. But take us back early in your career. You got an undergraduate degree actually in Indiana. So talk about your college days and that early start of your career.
Okay. Well, when I was in high school, I worked for a Rexall drugstore, and that's where I really got my start in information systems, computer science. We installed a computer. We were one of the first pharmacies in the area that had a computer, and so that really took me on the path of computer science. Went to school at Indiana State, got my degree in computer science, and I'd have to admit that I was the first class that didn't use punch cards.
All right,
so that takes you back a little bit. But through that experience, I graduated and worked for a pharmacy installation company, and throughout Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois, I installed computers and focused on healthcare and pharmacies.
That was a booming industry. I can
back
only imagine.
then it was,
yeah,
definitely. It was kind of the pioneer.
And then a little later in your career, you got into, you worked at Habitat. Is that one of the first places you really started to get even more passionate about sustainability?
That is where really the awareness.
The aha moment.
Yeah, that was the aha moment. Yeah,
Okay.
That's where I really didn't understand the importance of people, with the things that they were disposing, how incredible those materials could, they could serve, purpose still. And so I think through that experience with Habitat, that really opened up my eyes. But even before that, I had an interior design studio, and it was a group of people in the trade that came together to represent a one-stop shop. But the space that we occupied was in an old 200-year, historic building, and it was slated to be torn down. Wow. And so we took it and refurbished it, and that's where the creativity came into play, and the appreciation for those things that were out in the industry, sitting in warehouses, sitting, in people's, storage units and garages, and, all those things, they just kept piling up. People didn't want to throw them away, but they didn't know what to do with them. So that was where I took, that idea of being able to go out into, the community of building materials and get those materials to use, and we did that, as a group.
And was that studio here in Atlanta, or where was that? Okay.
Yeah, it was over in Duluth.
Great.
Yeah, Duluth. Yeah, we had over 20 people in the trade, and it was right during the time that the economy tanked. And so we were all kind of bunkered. Yes, we were all bunkered down in Duluth, and we weathered the storm. And once it was over with, they wanted to tear the space down, and I wanted my life back. So that's when I joined Habitat.
I know you really enjoyed your time at Habitat. I always like to ask, did you have any mentors there, maybe that helped you early in your career, or maybe around sustainability especially?
Sure.
Did you have a mentor?
I did. Her name was Michelle Uchiyama, and she was with Reclaim It Atlanta. She was also the executive director of Charitable Connections.
Right.
And so I met her. I was out looking at my competition, And I joined her newsletter, and I was just impressed by all the materials that she was able to bring into her store. And so I contacted her and reached out to ask for her help in bettering my job with Habitat. And so that started as a business relationship and grew into a very strong friendship. And unfortunately, we lost her last year.
I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like she really impacted you, and you're carrying that on. After Habitat, you were at the Blue Book. I remember when I worked for a big general contractor, we had the Blue Book right there on the shelf. I was working in estimating, and that was a very valuable tool. Now, not just the book, but especially online directories. So tell us about your time at Blue Book.
Sure. Well, stepping it back just a little bit at Habitat, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I had was finding reusable materials, reusable building materials. I was working with the construction industry, and it just seems like I was always a day late. You know, it just everything ended up in the dumpster, and my job was to try to get in there before, you know, those materials were thrown away. And so I used the Blue Book as a way to identify what projects were bidding out in the industry. And so, you know, I just couldn't figure out why it wasn't easy for me. You know, I thought, you know, with my IT background, that we could take this more to a digital platform to be able to identify where those materials were, to provide enough time so that we could manage and then ultimately plan the diversion. And so it was at Habitat I figured out that there really was a problem. It wasn't just me. It was also, you know, I don't know if you know Russell Bennett, he's the recycling director for Tarkett. He approached Habitat and asked me if there was a way that we could help, you know, identify carpet tiles that were PVC backed. Well, talk about a needle in a haystack. Well, you know, we couldn't help him. And I thought, if Habitat and people that were looking for recycled and salvaged materials were having problems, then the industry has a problem. And then I had an opportunity to join Blue Book, and it was at Blue Book that I dug in and figured out, you know, if we made a few changes in the industry and how we identify those materials, then I think we'll have a better hold on being able to find them, divert them, and then, you know, improve how we manage the recycle and salvage in general.
And that's how you transitioned to Blue Book, and you saw a lot of growth there, and really got to work with not just the contractors, the general contractors, but the subcontractors especially, and all the trades. Now fast forward to today, and what's keeping you busy today? I know there's two parts to that, because you're a heck of a salesperson in this construction movement, and then you have a passion on your LinkedIn as a crusader when it comes to deconstruction and changing the way that we handle materials that are normally thrown in the landfill. So tell us about the day job and your incredible sales career, and then we'll talk a little bit about the C&D side of things.
Sure. Now I work for Certapro Painters of Duluth and Norcross, and my job is to, you know, get in front of property management companies. Well, that, in the course of my career, that was probably one of the weakest areas in really my strength with sales and marketing. And so it's been a wonderful experience for me, because in this I discovered really who holds the power, in my opinion, to be able to improve how the industry manages recycled and salvaged materials. So through my job, my day job, you know, I'm able to meet a lot of the people that I think we could rally in order to be able to change how the industry, you know, approaches diversion. And so, you know, with the day job, it kind of filters over into, you know, what I do as my passion project, and that is, you know, to rally the industry, you included. Thank you, Charlie, because you were the first recruiter. Yeah, and so, you know, we rallied the industry, a lot of us together, and you know, bringing people, you know, into, you know, the movement of being able to identify really where those materials are, so that the right people can engage at the right time before construction starts, which is really critical, so that we have the time to manage and plan the diversion.
Before it's too late, I'm going to ask one paint question, then we're going to talk C&D.
Sure.
I teach a lead class. I say, you know, 5 years ago, low VOC paint might have been more expensive and inferior product, but can you just validate and confirm to those listening that the low VOC paints, you know what, they're mainstream. I mean, it's got to be a part of most every project you work on.
I think, I don't know of any other paint products that we use anymore that's not low VOC. And so I think it's just common practice, yeah.
And is it hard to recycle some unused paint?
That here in Georgia, it's a huge problem.
Okay.
You know, out in California, there are organizations in place through the Coatings Association. I can't remember what the name of it is. I'll have to go back and see. But they, you know, they have it down where you know they tax every gallon of paint, and that would be like, I think it's a $5 kind of service tax. And then that pays, you know, for the recycling. And so after, you know, people are done using what paint they need, so if they have anything left over, they can return it free of charge, and then they're not paid, or they're not having to pay to recycle. It's already accounted for by that tax when they buy the gallon.
So we've come a long ways to those listening with the low VOC on the specifications. It's the normal practice, but on the recycling state by state, we've got some work to do.
We've got a lot, especially here in Georgia. You know, we do have paint recycling companies in place, but it's expensive, you know, to recycle. And so it's prohibitive for
And we want to do that
people.
throughout the year, not just during an Earth Week, electronics recycling, paint recycling. We need it to be, you know, a best practice throughout the year. All right, let's talk C&D, construction and demolition debris. You know, the statistic is 40% of what we throw into our landfills in the United States is C&D debris. It's filling up our landfills. LEED for new construction has done a pretty good job of saying, okay, let's divert 50 or 75% from a landfill or incinerator, but not every LEED project does that because it's an optional 1 or 2 points. So at least we're talking about it. LEED is helping, but now we're seeing other certifications come out. Where do you think the biggest need is with construction, demolition debris? And then let's talk about some of the specifications you're helping to rewrite.
Sure. Gosh, there's so many places
well, where
that
do
we
we start? I mean,
to me, we start with deconstruction.
Okay.
You know, currently, right now, the industry does not recognize deconstruction contractors as a trade. You
it's
know,
a
as
powerful
a
word.
Exactly.
I mean, you and I talked a lot about it. Deconstruction. Don't just demolish a building and maybe recycle some materials, but can we dismantle it and reuse and not have to use new virgin materials? So deconstruction. Start there.
So I think that was the biggest hurdle that we jumped when we proposed new codes for Master Format 2018, which is the construction communication language, you know, for the industry. And so we ended up introducing deconstruction. And then recently I found out that there is an organization called Building Materials Reuse Association that does have a deconstruction course, and they certify contractors. So they have a book. It's called Introduction to Deconstruction.
Right.
And so, you know, that is my latest read, so I just ordered that.
Nice.
So I'm excited to get that. But to me, that's where it starts, is for people to recognize prior to demolition that now you insert, you know, this deconstruction contractor, and my feeling is that deconstruction contractor will be the person who will manage the recycle and salvage to come up with the diversion.
And for those listening, we want to make sure that, you know, Stacie and I challenge you. Maybe you're an architect and you don't have a building you could deconstruct. Specify some salvage materials. So another site's deconstructed materials. Can you use some of that? Not just get the extra lead points, but earlier, Stacie, we were talking about how commercial construction might have a little more red tape, a little more set in its ways than, say, residential, more flexibility. So do you see this growing more on the residential side first, true deconstruction, these centers, like here in Atlanta, we have the Life Cycle Building Center. It's fantastic. Does it need to grow on the residential, then commercial takes notice?
In my opinion, yes, because it's going to be easier there's a lot more flexibility on the residential side, where the commercial side, the contractors need to be a little bit more careful. If those materials can somehow one day be recertified for reuse. I think I think there's some work being done there. But, you know, too, it's to me, one of the biggest challenges, aside from inserting that deconstruction contractor, is the fact that we have to create demand. You know, we don't have channels right now to create demand. And I think, you know, engaging people like Chip Wade of HGTV, he's a contractor, a celebrity contractor, getting him on board. He's also a media sponsor for Habitat for Humanity Restore. So gathering, you know, more people like him that are committed to reuse, and really teaching people on, you know, what they can do with the materials once they do, you know, once they are salvaged, so that we can kind of push them through the economy. Because the last thing that we need is for all of us to get on board to deconstruct and divert and have all these materials that are just sitting there and not being reused. And so that's a whole other
it's
bag
awareness,
of
it's education, it's what we do on commercial green buildings, but it's, so one thought that came to mind is, and we'll link to it in the show notes, is the Life Cycle Building Center. Last time we volunteered there, they told us a lot of people in Atlanta that flip houses come there to get materials. So that's an interesting kind of sub-market. And they get a lot of materials from all the movie and TV studios here in Atlanta. So make sure we're thinking outside of the normal streams. Totally fascinating there. And we'll link to the book you mentioned too.
Yeah. Well, and two, just one caveat, you know, if we can reach out to those industries or those markets that would be able to reuse, you know, theater companies, you know, creating sets, and, you know, Boys Clubs of America, you know, they have projects that they have, not Boys Clubs, Boy Scouts, they have projects that they have to do. So like if they were to create like raised flower beds, you know, just use that reusable materials instead of going to, you know, a big box store and buying them, you know. So it's just really education. And I think, you know, just seeing, you know, what's going on right now in the world today, the youth coming up, you know, look what they did with March for Our Lives. I mean, if we could just get that generation fired up, it just gives me goose chills, you know, just to think of what we can do by educating the young so that they can carry on and make that change.
No, I mean, I think when you're in that high school, going to college, that's when you're sometimes the most passionate around something, and you can really make a career path out of it. So you're right, a lot of education needed there. Let's talk about the IT side of it, though. You and I agree there might not be just one go-to directory to link all of these reclaimed materials, deconstructed materials. Oh, and then over here, it's a perfect fit for such and such project. So there's a few directories out there, but you know, how can we do better there with some way to connect everyone through technology?
Well, that is a really good question, because you and I have been bouncing this around for a good year. And so I finally gave up, and we're creating one. And we're engaging all of the people in the industry that have a stakehold in this, so that we are addressing their needs. And so as it starts out, it's going to be coded and designed so that it can grow and morph as it needs to. But for just to begin with, we're going to house all of the recycled and salvage vendors, as well as the liquidators, the building material brokers, the reuse retailers like Life Cycle Building Center and Habitat Restore, as well as manufacturers. We can't forget the manufacturers and the reclamation programs that they offer, because it helps offset the cost of construction, because a lot of those manufacturers will come in and pay to remove the materials so that they're clean and not contaminated, so that they will also pay to haul them, so that reduces the cost of hauling for the contractor. So there are some good sides to this, and I know it's going to be a little bit painful, you know, to try to work through it, but you know, we're working with a logistics company now. We've also got, you know, Rubicon, you know, which is really big into the recycling, not so much the salvage, but I'm looking at companies like Blue Grace Logistics to see if maybe they can help us out. And so it's just a matter of starting. You know, we just have to start. And so this directory, is to me is going to be a lifeline. I think, to, creating a way to obtain the information, and not just information, but the right information, because there's a lot of stuff out there it's really not correct information. And so I think that's important.
Change can be painful to some.
Yeah.
I think we also need the trust. If you're an architect, that there's, if you were normally going to specify this kind of flooring or these wood doors, that you could quickly look on this directory and say, you know what, instead of new, I want these ones. You might even need to put a placeholder on that material, but it's be proactive, and then you're going to get a better material. A contractor can trust that maybe it's even cost effective too, and that helps keep us in budget on these green building projects. So I agree, probably residential, more flexibility, smaller projects, faster. Commercial though, huge need. So master spec, rewriting some specifications. Tell us the timing there. Some of that's rolling out. Some listening will probably see these specifications by the time this airs.
Well, master format, which is published by Construction Specification Institute, is they approved, the task force committee approved the set of codes that we suggested to expand O2, the division 0242, which is recycle and salvage. And so we've got now about 40 new codes, and what that did was that created a way for us, or the construction industry, to identify those materials that will be generated from those projects. And so for us, having that in master format will give us the tool that we need to communicate to those recycled and salvage. Though anybody that procures materials will be able to communicate that as a part of the project instead of a sideline, because that to me is where a lot of the problems, I think you and I have had multiple conversations, and you have even said, if we do not adopt this way of being able to include the recycle and salvage, the industry will continue to struggle to fully embrace sustainability. So
yeah, thank you for correcting me there. Master format 2018. So CSI, of course, the Construction Specifications Institute. That's what you're working on. And then two of the biggest spec writers, BSD and Avitru, they're really trying to model it and make sure it's in front of more specifiers, more architects as well. So I think everyone's taking notice there, not just on LEED, not just on well, but these specifications are needed in master format 2018.
Right, and I think the biggest change that we're going to face is inviting all of those procurement vendors, recyclers, salvagers, reuse retailers, liquidators. If a hotel has a big renovation going on, if they knew that all those furnishings were going to be available prior to the project starting, they can come in and they can bid as if they were a contractor. And so I think for us, it's re-educating the industry on how to work with the construction industry so that we can create a collaboration. And I think that is the word for 2018 is collaboration, because it's not just one industry needing to take responsibility. It's all of the industries. It's the architects, it's the general contractors, the subcontractors. Me, as a subcontractor, painting contractor, we recently did a project where we had store fixtures that were still in good shape, reusable, but they were replacing them. So instead of throwing them in the dumpster, we took them over to Habitat Restore. And it served many purposes. It was sold to generate proceeds to help families in need, and then we as a contractor got a tax receipt for the donation, and then it reduced our waste disposal fees. So it's just educating those subcontractors, that they too have a place in being able to reduce, what goes into the landfill.
Great job, and we need more of that. Stacie, let's talk a little bit about productivity. Let's talk about just your career a little more. What do you think your specialty is? What's your gift? I know your polite persistence as a salesperson is very good. But
thank you, Charlie.
What's your gift?
I would probably say rallying people behind an idea or a cause, because I think passion has a lot to do with getting people to agree to be a part of it, you know, whatever it is that your mission is or what you're trying to accomplish. And I think I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at getting people. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked passion a few times on the podcast here, and it's one of those that you know, can passion be something that you can make a living off of? Can it be a hobby? I mean, it just, you know what, spend the right amount of time on it, and it's going to be fulfilling to you. Maybe the stars align. It can be something that you really make an entire career out of. But just you gotta be a good communicator and get people behind you. So.
Well, and I think too, for me, it's easy because I'm in the industry. I'm talking to the people that I need to speak to, you know, with respect to the project or the property managers and the engineers.
Right.
So I'm where I need to be, and I think sometimes it's easier to get things done when there's not a motive, like a financial motive behind it. You know, I think it becomes pure because people know that what I do at CertaPro Painters does not relate to, you know, the sustainability side of it, you know, directly. So I think they're willing to listen to me because I think that they know that it's coming from the right place.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about some productivity tips. You got to stay organized. You're juggling a lot. Do you have any routines or rituals? Any go-to softwares you use? What keeps you successful?
Well, Salesforce.
Okay,
Big
really
time.
like Salesforce.
I use Salesforce as if it was, you know, just it keeps me straight, and so I use that on a daily basis.
Good.
And so as far as best practices, it is so tempting for me to work on, you know, the things that we're doing together, the Master Format 2018 initiative. And it's so easy for me letting that bleed into my everyday, you know, work life. But I have to keep it, you know, separate. I have to work on it before, you know, my day starts, which is around 8, 9 o'clock, after work, after 5, and then I spend most of my weekends, you know, working on this little project. But right now, because it's go time, you know, we're gearing up for the release of Master Format, which could be any day now.
Good. No, you're right. You find the time, right?
Yeah.
You put the most important things on the calendar, and that just you allow those most important things to take up some headspace, and then you just have to say no to other things. But I'm a fan of the bucket list. I have a lot of items on my bucket list. Some adventure, some business milestones, some milestones with my family. What are 1 or 2 things, Stacie, on your bucket list?
Okay, personal or professional?
About one of each.
Okay, one of each. I think the biggest bucket list item for me professionally would be to get that directory done. I've been, you know, mulling over it and had my first meeting last week with the web architect, so we're off and running. But I need help. I need funding. I need, you know, help with design. You know, making sure that what we're doing is accounting for all of the people that are using it. And I think I've got the right people engaged, but you know, I'm going to come back to you here pretty soon and just say, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you see any ways to improve it? So watch for that. So that to me, and another bucket list there would be, you know, creating demand for all the reusable materials, working maybe with HGTV, House, Angie's List, you know, all those platforms out there, Pinterest, Facebook, you know, anybody, you know, that just to connect people socially, we got to come up with a marketing plan to engage, you know, them to get behind it because they have the power.
And if anyone listening wants to reach out to Stacie, we'll put how you can get a hold of her because she is passionate about this, wants it to come true. It's close, and, you know, could use a little advice or some other help. So I think someone will reach out and,
that would
and I'll
be
keep
great.
helping you, okay?
Okay, oh yeah. I'll keep nudging you too.
How about that polite persistence?
Yes.
How about on the personal side? Any personal bucket list item?
I want to be a grandma.
All right. There you go.
I've got 2 boys and they're not ready yet, but I am.
You're ready.
So personally, I want to be a grandma.
That's
so
awesome.
I've done a lot of traveling. I've lived overseas for 10 years, so I feel like I've got that. I've sowed those oats, and so now I'm kind of looking forward to spending time with grandkids.
It's so exciting. Yeah, actually, we were talking earlier about I'm going to speak at Greenbuild Europe, which is a huge honor.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
To go to Berlin, but you've it sounded like traveled to several countries. So are there 1 or 2 countries you really enjoyed spending a little time in?
Ireland.
Wow. Okay.
Ireland is my favorite.
Nice.
Yeah. I lived in England for about almost 3 years,
Nice.
and so we went to Ireland several times, and
Okay.
to me that's heaven on earth. You know,
Alright.
I just love Ireland. But Germany is nice. I hear you're going to Germany
Yeah, it's gonna be-
in
I'm really
April, so
excited.
that's exciting. But you know, that was fun. You know, living in Germany and traveling throughout, you know, the country and
Wow.
learning the culture, and you know, trying to break through the language barrier was
Okay.
interesting. But Singapore, I lived in Singapore, and that was a good. We were almost there 5 years, so that was my first international post,
Okay.
and so
No, I want to talk to you more about those travels. Just a couple more questions.
Mhm.
You mentioned
Sure.
a book earlier. Is there one more
Yeah.
book you'd recommend that someone should really read or listen to? Just maybe a recent book, or just one that's a go-to for you?
Oh geez, that was a good question. You know, I have two speeds, on and off.
Sure.
And I really don't have an opportunity to read a lot, but I do read like construction waste, or was it waste dive and construction dive. I do
So
read
those
those online publications. I'm very into, you know, keeping up with the industry. I think if anybody is interested in this, that is a really good way to kind of get your pulse of what's going on in the industry. They do a really good job.
Yeah, and they're current events and keeping you posted.
Yeah.
Stacie, what advice do you have for someone that might be jumping into this green building movement? Any advice there?
Well, I think no matter what industry you're in, there's got to be dedicated resources to sustainability, because we're all learning it, for one thing. Secondly, there's really no manual out there other than what we have with LEED. So, you know, for example, a property manager, you know, it would be really good if we could have within each company a liaison that can, you know, communicate those sustainability messages so that they can interpret and then integrate those into their culture. You know, so I think I really don't see where it's taught in the school systems. You know, either trade schools, which by the way is something that I think there's a lot of opportunity there. You know, with growing that sector of the industry, just trades in general. But you know, just to be able to, you know, create the awareness at a school level, college, university, so that they do take into account, you know, those best practices for sustainability.
Yeah, I've mentioned before on the podcast, 37% of those that are signed up for the LEED Green Associate, the first exam, are in high school or college. So
Really?
you mentioned passion earlier. You mentioned that's the right time, maybe even middle school, of course, before there's too much influence. But here in the United States, there's a big push that it's not just 4-year college degrees, but we need more the trades to be a certain level of skill set. There's a big need for that here, and so I think that's also part of what you're talking about, is make sure that new workforce knows these options are out there. Deconstructed materials. How does sustainability affect your job, affect your company, affect your industry? Maybe I'm the rare exception where I have a consulting firm about sustainability. Sure, that's maybe a rare exception to, but even then we focused on commercial buildings, and so that's just one industry.
And to recycling, you know, there's no training for the proper way to recycle from a vendor perspective. You know, how a lot of these companies get involved and get, you know, start businesses, and they're not really doing things the right way. And I think, you know, you met Rob Watson, who's better known as the father of LEED. He has a new organization or a program called SWEEP, which is Solid Waste Environmental Excellence Protocol. It's a hard one to remember, but SWEEP, it's easier. But that's what his mission is to go back and to certify those vendors, so that we know in the industry who has been properly trained or has best practices that do follow with the right processes.
Well, I know we're going to continue to work on some of these initiatives. You've had an awesome career. More to come from Stacie Stanford. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to put the links in the show notes. You can go to gbes.com/podcast. But Stacie, thanks so much.
No, thank you, Charlie. I really do appreciate being here today and having the opportunity to just talk and increase awareness and for your continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.